Welcome back to another episode of the Know Your Power podcast. I am your host, Kendall Aaliyah.
Oh, I'm Julia Renee.
We've just filmed a full episode, and I
almost
feel
forgot
like
to
I
say
wasn't
my name.
there the whole time.
I forgot to say my name.
You're Julia Renee.
Yes, as I am.
Today we have another episode of the mindfulness series, and today we're talking more about anxiety. I feel like this is something we both have more often than depressive episodes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to start by defining it again. I feel like that's important. So like the basic anxiety definition is intense, excessive, and persistent worry and fear about everyday situations. These are kind of like symptoms or signs. Fast heartbeat, rapid breathing, sweating, and feeling tired may occur.
Yeah, you're tired because you're wearing yourself out, man.
Because your heart rate's doing sprints.
The amount of times that I have literally put myself into nights from just anxious episodes,
I swear,
is unreal. I'm like, I just knock myself out because I'm so tired. That's
my new reaction, and we'll get into like how anxiety really looks for us, but my newest thing is I will just pass out. Like I was on so I get flight anxiety, and I've been better now, but I think it was my first or second flight after having the flight that gave me flight anxiety. And I remember I was on the window seat, and this is a perfect example, and I called my mom after. I was like, I think I have a new response to anxiety. I would look out the window, feel anxiety, knock out, literally for 5 minutes. I'd wake up again, look again, not literally was in and out for 100 times. No, it was so bad. But I feel like my brain is we don't want to deal with this. I'm just going to go.
Your brain's tired. You literally work yourself. If you've ever struggled with anxiety before, it takes a lot out of your body. It takes a lot out of your body and your mind. And you just put yourself in a coma after because you're overworking yourself.
Oh yeah. So that's my new thing is so on the drive to the flight, last week in New York, right? My driver was so bumpy and I was getting car sick, and I have a phobia of throwing up. So that same fear, anxiety, I don't want to get sick, I knocked out in their backseat for the whole drive. Yeah, I have a picture. It's not pretty. I'm just
imagining Kendall sitting there, eyes wide open, maybe a bead of sweat, and looking left, looking right, and then
no, literally. And my boyfriend was next to me. There were 3 of us in the backseat, so it felt crammed. Yeah. And the AC was on him, so I kept pushing his leg to get some air.
When I'm anxious and I have I can't deal with people around me. I barely like people touching me when I'm not anxious, but when I am, I'm like,
yeah. I get overstimulated.
Give me my space.
Anyway, we're going to kind of go into our story together. So I want to start at the beginning, which is kind of when's the first time you noticed you had anxiety, or maybe you didn't even notice at the time and you look back now and you're like, oh, that's where it started. For me, it was interesting because I don't think I realized it until I was literally writing this down. The first time I thought I had anxiety was in the form of panic attacks. I would get panic attacks maybe once a year in school, starting in 7th grade. And this was weird to me because, just for context, I was very outgoing as a kid, very social, had no problem talking to anyone or about anything. So my 4th grade graduation, which I know, big deal, but I gave the speech to the entire school.
Bro, what?
So as a kid, that's the level I was at of I loved talking in front of people. I was so outgoing, which is so opposite of me today. And I was fine. So I gave this presentation to hundreds. It was a decent sized school, all of elementary school graduation, right? So I gave a huge speech, and then a few years later, I'm in 7th grade, and I had to read something literally half a paragraph, I think, in front of class. It was history class, right? And I had never experienced a panic attack, anxiety, any of that. To my knowledge, I'll get into where I think it actually came from in a second. But I literally started feeling so sick, profusely sweating, felt like I couldn't see, my vision was getting weird. I didn't know what was going on, but I'm 2 sentences in, and I look at my teacher and I said, I need to go to the nurse. And first off, that embarrassment of being that girl
made it more.
Yeah, made the anxiety even worse. And I went to the nurse. I don't think she even told me it was a panic attack. I think I just deductioned it on my own and realized that's what it was. And then from then on, I like had to email my teachers every year and be like, hey, I get panic attacks, like being randomly called on to read long passages. Do you mind if I like either have it in advance or like whatever, right? So a lot of that was being like unprepared. If I wasn't prepared for something or like, I don't know what it was, but anyway, so that was my first like panic attack, anxiety attack, whatever you want to call it. And then I never had one again for like several years. But looking back while I was writing this, I was like, oh my gosh, I used to have really bad anxiety in the sports I did as like a young kid. When I was a cheerleader and a gymnast, I was probably ages like 7 to 12. I would throw up every single competition. Like that was an extreme level of nerves to that point where looking back, I'm like, I had really bad like performing or like stage anxiety. Yeah. And I don't think I ever realized that. I thought I would just like get a normal level of nervousness. I was like, oh, everyone feels like this. When in reality, looking back, I would like used to get so sick to be in front of like a large crowd, always. Mm-hmm. So I think that was my origin story of anxiety.
I can't really remember like a specific moment for me where I was anxious, but anxiety definitely runs like in my family. Like it's a real thing. But for me, as a kid, I don't think I was like an anxious kid. I was a very hyper kid. Like I did sports. I talked a lot.
We were both outgoing kids.
Yeah, I talked a lot and I wanted to like be the center of attention at all the times. I'm still very much the same, I'm still very much like that. But I feel like when I can actually start noticing anxiety might have been more so when I started getting in like middle school or high school about like, silly little things. I was never really I had a normal level of anxiety, like speaking in front of people, but it wasn't like to the point where like I had to go to the nurse or anything like that. But I definitely remember that's when I started biting my nails a lot. And I've been a nail biter like forever.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. That's why I always have nails on so that I don't bite my nails and like pick them to the point where like they bleed and I have like no nail like whatsoever. And so that was probably like middle school and high school. And anytime that I still like get anxious, I will pick like my nails.
It's still like a default.
Still like to this day, even if I have nails in, like I'll start to pick and then I'll notice. And if I don't, I'll start picking my actual eyelashes extensions off my.
That sounds so painful.
There was a point where I think in middle school, I must have been so anxious and it's like I can barely remember, but I didn't wear fake eyelashes at the time. I was wearing my real ones and I would be so anxious in class because school was just not my thing and I never understood really what was going on ever.
Yeah.
And I picked all my eyelashes off that I had no eyelashes to put mascara on.
Julia.
Bro, yeah.
That breaks my heart.
Yeah, it was crazy. And I mean, I didn't know that that's what it was at the time. I just thought that like I liked doing this, but it was out of anxiety. Like I pick out of anxiety. So whether it was my nails or my eyelashes.
I weirdly scratch out of anxiety. Yeah. I still do it today. Like I'll just like, I don't know if it just keeps me like more present and in my body.
Yeah.
But yeah, it used to be bad where I would like sit there and scratch the same spot just over and over until like my skin was raw.
It's like you're trying to do something with your hands because you're trying to release that energy in some sort of way.
Yeah.
And we'll probably talk about like how to healthily
do it instead of picking out your eyelashes.
Instead of picking your eyelashes out like me. But I think that's when it got like I first noticed that it was a thing.
Yeah.
And then the older that I got, the more frequent that it got. When I started my business, the more frequent that it got.
Yeah.
Once I started adding more stressors in my life, bodybuilding on top of owning a business, it got worse, but now I just know how to manage it, but I'm not always the best, like 100%. Like not last Monday, but the Monday after, I had like a full like panic attack, like debilitating, where I wasn't able to do any work, where I was so anxious and it felt like bees were buzzing in my head, where I got no work done because I had so much work to do, like when you're paralyzed.
Oh yeah.
And you can't, and that never happens to me.
We
ever.
all know that happens to me.
Yeah, that never happens to me where I can't physically do work because I'm so anxious. Usually I'm driven by my anxiety to do work. And we can also talk about like the difference between anxious avoidant and anxious attachment too, whenever it fits in. But
I feel like we could talk about that now.
Okay, cool. So the anxious avoidant is when...
That's me.
That's Kendall. When you get anxious, you avoid like responsibilities, answering text messages, or whatever the problem is, because it makes you feel slightly better for a moment in time. When you're anxious attachment, like me, you grasp on way tighter, and you have to like, it's almost like you have to do the thing until get it done for you to feel relief. So you'll have to text that person back. You'll have to get that project done immediately. And if you don't do those things, like you won't feel calm until you do that.
Eventually, anxious avoidant becomes that, because obviously I have to face it eventually. I think me prolonging it with distractions or not looking at it. So like, one thing for me is like often emails and text messages. If I wake up in the morning and I see I have 5 different like work related texts, and I'm not ready for it yet. Instead of someone like you who might go in and immediately answer all 5, it's done. I'll be like going throughout my whole day with it all 5 in the back of my head. And then I get 2 more and that adds to it. And I'm like, well, now I'm definitely not going to like check any, because if I check one, I have to check them all. So eventually I do get to that point where obviously doing the task is going to alleviate the anxiety.
You have to do it eventually, unless like you want to get fired from your job or like something, or something like that.
That's a very bad habit of mine, and something I've been trying to get better at is like, okay, if something's causing me anxiety, let's tackle it instead of let's avoid it. So, but those are the 2 like main, you often fall into one of those categories. Rarely are you like, oh, okay, this is normal and healthy.
I'm just perfect and great. And for me, like anxious attachment can be super negative too, because for example, like for the example that you use with like the text messages and stuff, like if I see that I have like 5 text messages in the morning, I have a bunch of emails that I need to answer, and my anxiety, I'm feeling anxious, I will go and answer those and get all those done before I'm even ready for my day. So I'm starting work on other people's timelines before my own. And this is how it can be bad. And then also it can be like a situation where it's like 9 p.m. at night and I'm texting somebody that they need to get something done. And Zach will be like, Julia, just do it tomorrow. And I'm like, no, it has to be done now or I'm not going to be okay. And he's like, you need to learn to be okay. You can always do this tomorrow. So there's positive and negatives of both, you know?
I mean, both are anxiety responses. Like obviously neither are going to be like extremely healthy. Okay. Going into like how often we experience anxiety, I think we should go into like more so like now. For me, it depends on the week personally. I'll go into like what my anxiety triggers are in like the next minute. But some weeks I'll have a great week. I'll feel like little to no anxiety at all. I'm fine. I'm thriving. Those are usually my busy weeks. I notice if I work a lot, I don't almost give myself time to feel anxious about any of it. I'm just kind of in go mode. And that's honestly healthy for me. I notice if I have a lot of downtime, that might lead to like worrying or overthinking or thinking a lot about the future is a lot of my anxiety causing times. So it fully depends on the week for me. I've definitely had weeks where I have like debilitating anxiety every single day. I feel like I can't get a lot done, or I'm like overly worrying about everything. My emotions are heightened, and then I'm exhausted like we talked about. And then the next week I could be completely fine. So it's very dependent on situation and events for me.
I think for me, I have struggled with like a tinge of it every single day since I can remember. But I function, if you were ever with me, you'll get this, but I function at a pace that's like kind of like a rabid squirrel. Like the pace in which that I move through life is very quick and very, very fast. And I go from like thing to thing to thing. Like that's just how I enjoy being busy in that way. But it can also be very bad for my health, because you guys have heard me talk about this. I go, and then I crash because I never take care of myself. So I struggle with doing that. But only recently it had gotten really bad, where I overloaded myself with way too much work. I added something else on top of my plate.
Yeah.
And then I had a difficult conversation that I needed to have with my employees. They're not fired. Don't think that. It was just a difficult conversation that I need to have. And then there was a difficult conversation that I needed to have with Kendall, which she's also still my best friend. It was just
we're fine.
Yeah, it was just like a friend conversation of us like talking. So like it was like build up. Now that I'm a couple weeks removed, I can see like where it all went wrong. And it was like the anxiety started like Sunday because I knew I was going to have that talk on Monday. And then we had some issue. Then I knew
Kendall messed up.
And then I knew I had
added to her anxiety on the worst day.
And then I knew that like Kendall and I had to have a conversation. Plus all of the stuff that I had overloaded myself with work.
Yeah,
it was bound to happen. So this happened to me like very recently. Now I'm doing a lot better job at like managing it and delegating things and breathing and taking time to like move away from the computer when I'm starting to feel that way, and not force myself to work whenever I'm starting to feel a little bit panicked, and do something to pause, like whether it's putting on some music and breathing or going and like, I'm gonna just go make my meal and I'm gonna chill. But yeah, it's like I have like a tinge of it every single day.
Yeah.
That like drives me to like go and achieve, but then only maybe like a couple times a month, it'll be actually bad.
Yeah. I feel like that brings us to the next part, which is kind of talking about what anxiety symptoms we have. So that can be what daily symptoms do you have, or how does it look when it gets really bad? And I feel like that's really important because like you were saying, when you can see that, oh, my anxiety is heightening or it's getting worse, now I know it's time to take the steps to like kind of combat that.
Because like knowing what physical reactions you get is good to be like, oh, hey, I'm starting to do this, and this. Maybe I need to step back.
Yeah. Or like being like, okay, this is anxiety coming on. What's it coming from? Like just being able to address it and like recognize it, I think is important. For me personally, on the daily sense or like the weekly sense where it might be a little more mild or maintainable or like not a red flag for me, I'm always a worrier, an overthinker. I feel like I overthink a lot. Like I said, especially about like my future. I feel like we've talked about that before, is like a lot of the times depression is like living a little more in the past and like living a little more with like regrets and stuff like that. And anxiety is dealing with a lot of like what's next, what's coming up. Am I ready for it? Am I prepared? Like those types of thoughts. True. So I do live a lot in my head in the future, and a lot of that comes with like overthinking what that looks like for me. Yeah. Is it gonna go right? What could go wrong? Like all of those thoughts. I also get like elevated heart rate pretty regularly. I feel like that's a clear sign I'm like being anxious. And kind of on the flip of that is like a huge trigger of anxiety for me is health anxiety. I am a huge hypochondriac. Like
she literally thinks she's dying every
all
other
the time. So that's really important for me, because if my heart rate's going up, my brain goes, you're going to have a heart attack.
Oh, you are dying. This is it.
So I really need to recognize this is just anxiety. I sometimes say it out loud. Like if anyone's in the room, I'll just voice like, I feel a little anxious right now. Because putting that like, this is anxiety, not me having a heart attack. Yes. If I go down the road of like, my heart feels weird, I'm gone. Like that turns into like a full blown anxiety day. So that's like the most manageable ones for me. I do, like I said, get panic attacks, not very regularly. It's like a couple times in a whole year. And those feel a little more debilitating. If I'm in public, I immediately need to get alone because I feel, I sometimes feel like I might pass out. I think my heart rate gets really high because like once I start feeling that panicked feeling, oh, I can't breathe. Mm-hmm. Oh, now my heart rate's going even higher. Oh, now I really can't breathe because I'm not allowing myself to take deep breaths. So I start to like, it starts to escalate very, very quickly. So those are the times like I really need to recognize it and take precautions. I need to get alone. I need to call someone that I like know and trust, and someone that knows I have panic attacks, because I need to be like reminded to take deep breaths and stuff like that. I sweat a lot if I have panic attacks. Yeah. I just feel like I get really hot. That like that like red faced feeling is like immediately what I get to. Again, especially if I'm in public, embarrassment on top of feeling panicked, even though no one knows. Like typically I look very normal. I'm just kind of standing there, but in my head I'm like, don't pass out, you can breathe, like all of these things. Like, yeah, it gets quite bad. I haven't had one of those in a while, but I remember having one in a Target like a year ago.
Yeah, you told me about that.
Oh, it was so not fun. And I literally had to go and like sit in an aisle just to like get myself out of like this tunnel vision of like everything is collapsing. And it's like, no, you're just feeling a little anxious. You're feeling panicked. Like you just need to breathe. So a lot of those are my signs. Oh, and then recently I start to like tremble now. And I never had that before, but if I get like to that heightened like anxiety attack, not just like daily anxiety, I will full on shake like a lot. It's only happened like 2 or 3 times, but those like really freak me out because that's a new thing I've never had before.
I think mine is like almost like my body internally is shaking. Like my hands like won't necessarily shake or like actual limbs, but it's like inside my body I'm shaking. And it feels like bees are buzzing around in my head and like I can't hear anything. And it's just like...
That's kind of that like tunnel vision feeling. It's like everything's kind of caving in.
I think increased heart rate, I forget to breathe. Like I completely forget to breathe. Like there's times where I'm getting my nails done or I'm getting my lashes done and I've gone... And they think that they've like hurt me. And I'm like, and I'll just look at them and I go, I'm sorry. I was like, I have anxiety.
To breathe.
And I literally tell them, I forgot to breathe. And they just start giggling. And I'm like, yeah, I forgot to breathe. It's just normal. But it's true. Like I'll literally forget to breathe because I'm like, especially when you're doing something like getting your nails done or like getting your lashes, you're kind of just laying there. So you have time to think about the future and all of these things. And then I'll start thinking about like, well, after this, I'm going to go and do this. Then I have to do this. Then I have to go and do this. And then I'll go, oh crap, you're not breathing. And I'm like, breathe. Yeah. So those are the main things that I do. Sweating, I'm sweating all the time anyways. So it's just like, what's
anxiety
new?
Might not be.
What's new? I do that all the time anyways.
Do you ever get, do you ever get anxiety or panic attacks, or do they feel more gradual?
I don't think I've ever had like a panic attack.
I've only had a few, and they are not fun.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I hope to God you never experience one. They're just like, they're just scary because you don't know what's going on. So you feel like just very weird. Yeah. Almost.
Maybe on drugs or something. But not in real life.
Possibly, not real life, fake life only. Okay, I think triggers is another thing that's really important to recognize. So once you know what kind of your symptoms look like and you can like delegate, okay, this is anxiety, that's how I'm feeling, now we can tackle it. Also setting yourself up for success by knowing what your triggers are, like certain settings, certain places, certain conversations, whatever it is that might be a trigger for you. I feel like once you can recognize that, it's easier to mentally prepare if those are things you have to do regularly, or to avoid them if those are things you don't have to do. So for me, a lot of my anxiety is social anxiety. Mostly I've noticed like unexpected social anxiety. So like if I was in Times Square in New York City, I'm fine. Like that's a ton of people, but I'm fine. Like because I know I'm going to Times Square. I know I'm with people that I feel safe with. I don't really have to necessarily talk to a lot of people. But if I go to a gym on a random Tuesday and I walk in like ready for my workout and it's packed.
I've definitely had that. I get it a lot with new gyms. A lot with new gyms.
I think because you don't know what to expect, you kind of already don't know where things are. So you're like looking around and then like it feels more packed than it even is. I noticed it like rained on Saturday, and the gym I go to like posted some videos because they have like an outdoor indoor, and obviously it was raining. Everyone had to go inside. And some people were like, oh, I love it when it's packed like this. And I would have like literally freaked out if I was there.
I enjoy when there's enough people in the gym to where I am motivated by the people around me. And I don't like when it's empty because I'm bored. And even though I don't talk to them, it's like their hype makes me more hype. But then when it's like something like summer shredding and we go to Alpha Land or Alpha Land's grand opening, panic attack central, bro.
Yeah. So I think just like overly crowded settings or unexpectedly like having to again, kind of like the class thing, if I had to randomly talk about something I wasn't prepared for in front of a group of people, or even if just in front of a few people, I will notice I start to panic a little. I start to get anxious. But if I'm prepared and I know what I'm talking about, like, yes, I'll get nerves, but not necessarily like anxiety over it.
Yeah.
Another one, like I said, my hypochondriac ass, health anxiety. If I notice something's wrong, I'll definitely start to like have more anxiety that week. When I was dealing with like my stomach issues a few months ago, every day was like a new, so worried about it that I couldn't live my life. Like I also got to the point where I was like terrified to eat because I didn't know what was causing all of these issues. So I was like afraid to eat anything because I knew something was going to hurt. And then like, yeah, that was just like kind of cause and reaction thing. That's when I can't prepare for much, but I think working on, if something is bothering me, I don't go on WebMD anymore. I don't Google my symptoms. Like if I feel like it's bad enough, I'll go see a doctor and trust their opinion. Like that's just something for myself. I know not a ton of people deal with health anxiety, but that's a big one for me.
Yeah.
What?
Oh no, I was just gonna go ahead.
Okay. I was just gonna say another is like I think we both think a lot about our future, which I think can be healthy if it's in the sense of like setting goals, things we want to achieve. I think it's unhealthy when that's all our brain can focus on and kind of consumes us, and then we're kind of stuck in that thinking mindset of like not being present anymore. So with that one,
you're anxious of your potential that you could have, like your potential gives you anxiety. And I literally had this conversation with my mom because my moms are, they know. She texted me and she just knew that something was wrong with me. She literally, it's crazy. She had a dream, and in the dream, someone said the title of my YouTube series which is Prep, The Journey to Nobody. And then the next morning she texted me and asked that I was okay. And I had been, that was that week where I was just like unbelievably anxious and I just didn't have time for anything, let alone for myself. So I was talking to her about it, and I was just telling her that I get a lot of, I just straight up told her, I said, I have a lot of anxiety over feeling the need to succeed in order to make you and daddy proud. And my mom was like, if you did nothing else with your life, we would be proud of you. Yeah. Like, we're always proud of you. But I have so much anxiety around the expectation that I have to be successful. I don't know why. I do this to myself. And then sometimes it might be accidentally put on me by my parents. Yeah. Unintentionally, or upbringing, or however. But yeah, then I put a lot of pressure on myself to go and do all of these huge, big, incredible things that sometimes it's debilitating. It's like, it's all too much for me. Yeah. And I always just say this thing like in my brain, or I'll say it out loud. I'm like, I'm just one person. Yeah. So that's something that happens with me a lot with like triggers is this success that I want. Triggers a lot of anxiety if I let it. Yeah. The social anxiety, obviously. Like mine was so bad when Zach and I first met, and people never really believe me when I tell them this, but like he would like go out. I never really ever went out. And I think one of our third dates, it was his birthday, and they threw him like this big party, like at a club, and they had like a rented out thing. I can't picture Zach at a club either. I was so young at the time. I had no idea like what any of this was, like to rent out a space and stuff. I was like, what is happening? And I went because like we were dating and I wanted to support him on his birthday, and I just sit in the corner and I hide, and I go to the bathroom and I hide, and sometimes people can't find me and I'm in the corner by myself, sitting alone and hiding because I just don't like social. I don't like to go out. I don't like to really drink or do any of that anyways. But yeah, it would get so bad that I would just go and hide. I don't really do that anymore, but sometimes I do. Like I'll still go and hide. And yeah, but now you wouldn't put yourself in that setting now I'm just like, I don't even like to be there. Yeah. Like it's different going to like a event, like a big fitness event where I love it and I know that I love being there, but I do get really anxious. So before I go in, I just set my intention and kind of take a moment to pause and be present, breathe, and then I go in instead of just like running into the event. Like, what is your intention of going? How do you want people to feel when they meet you? You know, how do you want to come across when you're networking or meeting new people and blah, 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 blah. So I make sure I make that point before I go into any big social situation that I want to go into. Even if there's a lot that I go to that I don't necessarily want to, because in my relationship, I make compromises, you know, like I'm the person that wants to leave the party after being there for 30 minutes, and Zach's the one that wants to be there till 3 a.m. and we have to make compromises in our relationship. Like, okay, we'll leave in an hour, we'll check in, and then I'm over there.
My favorite thing about my boyfriend is that on the way to anywhere, we'll both go, do you want to turn around? And then we both go, and then we leave.
Did I send you that video of those two guys? They're like, wouldn't it be a shame if we didn't go to the party? And then they do the eye look.
The like little side eye. We do that all the time.
Man, we really should have gone to that party.
Yeah.
It's like,
we'll go do something like on the 3rd attempt. So like if his brother invites us to like, cause he's more outgoing. If he invites us to like something, we'll like cancel the first time. We'll cancel the second time. And then we're like, we should probably go. And then we'll go for a little bit and we'll still be the first to leave, whatever event it is.
I am always the first to leave.
Yep.
I'm always the first to leave. But those are things that can trigger a lot of my anxiety. But I've done like that practice that I do before I go into any expo, fitness thing.
That's a note I need to put in my own book.
Always do that, because there was a moment in particular that I can remember last year. I was going into FitCon and I was speaking at FitCon on like a panel, and past Julia never would have done that. Not even a thing, but I've been able to like build myself up to the moment where I enjoy doing that and it's fun, and I still get nervous, but I don't get like mad anxiety. But I was going into FitCon and we were working out at a gym. I start pulling up and then I stop breathing. You know, I do that to the gym, and then I knew, I was like, okay, before you go in, Ian and Zach got out. I was like, I'm just going to set my intentions real quick, and then I'll come out. And I sat there for a second, like